The sun had just begun its slow descent behind the jagged mountains when Lyra reached the gates of Velthar. The air was thick with the scent of iron and smoke, a constant reminder that the kingdom's power was built on both fear and fire. She tightened her cloak around her shoulders and took a deep breath. The court had summoned her, the healer from a distant village, to tend to the young heir. Many whispered that her presence here was unusual. Few had ever dared to enter the palace uninvited by the Alpha King himself. Lyra's heart beat like a drum in her chest as the massive gates creaked open. Soldiers in dark armor lined the entrance, their eyes sharp, scanning her as if they could weigh her intentions before she even spoke. She stepped forward, trying to appear smaller than she felt, but her gaze met theirs evenly. Some flinched under her steady eyes, others did not, yet none spoke. In this place, silence was often louder than the clanging of swords. The courtyard was a maze of stone and shadow, tall towers reaching like fingers into the sky. Statues of kings and queens long dead watched her as she passed. The air seemed heavy with whispers, as if the palace itself remembered every betrayal, every secret, every heartbreak that had ever occurred within its walls. Lyra had never believed in such things until now. She could almost feel eyes following her from the windows above. She was led through a series of grand halls, tapestries depicting battles and victories swaying slightly with the cold wind that slipped through the cracks. Finally, she reached a smaller chamber, far quieter than the rest of the palace. It smelled of old wood, herbs, and something faintly sweet. In the center of the room, a small figure lay under a blanket, pale and fragile. Kalen, the heir of Velthar, looked no older than 8, but his eyes held a depth that seemed far beyond his years. He watched her with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity, and when she approached, he did not flinch nor smile. He simply studied her, as if trying to understand who she was before she even spoke. "Kalen," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "I am Lyra. I have come to help you." He did not answer. Instead, his small hands clutched the blanket tighter. Lyra reached slowly for his hand, letting him see she meant no harm. To her surprise, he did not pull away. A quiet trust had begun to take root, fragile as a new bloom. "Have you eaten today?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. The boy's meals had been carefully prepared, yet none of the palace servants could coax him to eat. He would take nothing from their hands. He only accepted what Lyra offered, a fact that had stirred unease and jealousy among the others. Lyra prepared a small bowl of warm broth, her hands moving with practiced ease. She offered it to Kalen, holding her breath. Slowly, he leaned forward and drank. Her heart eased a little, but only for a moment. She had heard whispers in the halls. The new queen was watching, always watching, and she did not like Lyra's presence, nor the bond forming between her and the heir. Hours passed in quiet routine. Lyra cleaned, fed, and tended to Kalen. She spoke softly of distant forests, of rivers that sparkled under the moon, and of the stars that danced over the villages where she had grown. He listened, sometimes whispering a word or two, but mostly he watched, his gaze thoughtful. Lyra began to sense that the boy was more than fragile. There was a quiet power within him, subtle but undeniable. The evening deepened, and shadows lengthened across the room. A sudden chill made Lyra shiver. Kalen's eyes followed the movement of the dark corners, as though he could see things hidden from ordinary sight. He whispered a name she did not understand, and the air seemed to thrum in response. A shadow along the wall stretched unnaturally, then receded, leaving Lyra's heart hammering. "Kalen?" she asked cautiously. "What was that?" He looked at her, eyes wide, and said in a small, serious voice, "I was talking to them, the ones who live in the walls." Lyra blinked. "The walls?" He nodded solemnly. "They hear everything. They remember everything. They only listen to me." A shiver ran down her spine, but she forced herself to stay calm. Whatever magic or curse haunted this palace, she could not let fear control her. She knelt beside him, holding his hand. "Then I will listen too," she said. "If you trust me." Kaelin studied her a long moment, and for the first time, a small, hesitant smile appeared. It was like the flicker of a candle in darkness, fragile, but enough to warm her heart. The sound of footsteps outside the chamber made them both freeze. Lyra quickly covered the bowl of broth and stepped back. The door opened, and the new queen entered, tall and regal, her presence commanding the space like a storm. She wore a gown of deep crimson, embroidered with silver threads that glinted like lightning. Her gaze fell immediately on Lyra, sharp and assessing. "You are the healer they have sent for the boy," the queen said, her voice smooth and dangerous. "I hope you understand your place here." Lyra bowed her head slightly. "I am here to care for Kaelin, your majesty. Nothing more." The queen's eyes narrowed. She stepped closer to the bed, looking down at the boy. "And you," she said softly, her voice dripping with a sweetness that felt false. "You will eat only what I give you from now on." Kaelin's eyes flicked to Lyra, and he shook his head. He did not speak, but the message was clear. He would not obey her. Lyra felt a swell of protectiveness rise within her. She knew the queen's threat was not empty. If the boy refused her, the consequences could be severe. The queen smiled, a cold and cruel curve of her lips. "We will see how long that loyalty lasts," she whispered, then turned and left, her gown flowing behind her like a river of blood. The moment the door closed, Kaelin let out a small, relieved breath. "You cannot let her win," he said quietly, gripping her hand. "She wants to take everything from me. From us." Lyra's heart ached at the intensity of his words. She had seen cruelty before, but never so calculated, so personal. She sat beside him, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "I will protect you, Kaelin, no matter what." The night deepened, and the palace seemed to shift around them. Shadows moved, whispering secrets only the two of them could hear. Lyra felt a sense of awe and fear. This boy, fragile and small, held a power the world had yet to understand. And in that power lay danger not just to him, but to everyone who sought to control him. As she prepared a small bed for herself nearby, Lyra glanced at Kaelin, who was staring once more at the shadows on the walls. "Who are they?" she asked softly. "They are the ones who remember," he whispered. "They wait. They listen. They will speak when it is time." Lyra nodded, though she did not fully understand. One thing was clear. Kaelin's life was not just in her hands, but entwined with forces far greater than the walls of Velthar. And if the queen's ambition reached its peak, they would both be in grave danger. Outside, a storm began to rise. The wind howled against the palace walls, rattling windows and doors, carrying whispers of things long forgotten. Lyra held Kaelin's hand a little tighter, feeling the weight of the coming days. She had entered the palace to heal a boy, but already she sensed that this was only the beginning, that shadows, power, and desire were already weaving their threads around her heart. And then, in the quiet of the candle-lit room, Kaelin whispered something that made her blood run cold. "Lyra, they are coming for me tonight." The storm outside Velthar's palace grew fiercer, rattling the windows and tossing shadows across the stone walls. Lyra stayed close to Kaelin, her hands still holding his small, trembling ones. The boy's whisper from the night before echoed in her mind. "They are coming for me tonight." She had no doubt he meant it. The palace, with all its grandeur, was alive with secrets, and dark forces were gathering in the shadows. Kaelin's pale face was framed by disheveled hair, and his eyes glimmered with fear, but also determination. "Lyra," he said softly, "they are testing me. If I fail, everything changes. I cannot let that happen." Lyra knelt beside him, brushing a hand over his forehead. I will not let anything happen to you. Whatever comes, we face it together. Her words, gentle but firm, seemed to give him a little strength, yet she knew it was more than protection he needed. He needed understanding. Someone who could see him as more than just a fragile heir. The first knock on the chamber door came, just as the wind shrieked through the corridors. Lyra stiffened, ready to shield Kaelin, but the boy shook his head. Wait. A figure entered silently. It was one of the palace's shadowed servants, cloaked in gray, their eyes wary. In their hands was a small, wooden box. Kaelin's gaze fixed on it with strange intensity. Bring it closer, he whispered. The servant hesitated, glancing at Lyra, then obeyed. Inside the box lay a delicate silver pendant, shaped like a crescent moon. Lyra leaned closer, curious. What is it? Kaelin's hand hovered over the pendant, and the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to lean toward him. It is part of me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It holds a fragment of the old magic. My father's magic. My father's magic. Lyra's heart skipped. She had heard whispers of the Alpha King's powers, but never truly believed they would be tangible, alive in his child. You carry your father's magic in you. Kaelin nodded. It is why I am weak. It is also why they fear me. If I grow too strong, too soon, the Queen will try to take it. I cannot let her. The Queen's name made Lyra's blood chill. She had only seen her briefly, yet even in that short encounter, the woman's ambition and quiet cruelty had left a mark. And now, the Queen's reach seemed closer, more immediate, more dangerous than ever. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hall outside. The shadows in the room stretched unnaturally, moving as if alive. Lyra grabbed Kaelin's hand. Stay close, she whispered. The door burst open, and several figures rushed in. Lyra recognized them as the Queen's guards, but there was something wrong. They moved jerkily, their eyes blank, as if controlled by some invisible force. Lyra felt a surge of fear, but Kaelin did not flinch. He stepped forward, small, yet unyielding. Stop! He shouted. The voice, though quiet, carried an authority far beyond his years. The guards froze, their movements halting mid-step. Shadows recoiled from the boy, and the air hummed with power. Lyra's eyes widened in disbelief. Kaelin's magic, subtle yet undeniable, held them at bay. Lyra knelt quickly beside him. Kaelin, what are you doing? He glanced at her, his eyes steady. I am protecting us. You cannot leave me. The moment stretched, taut with tension. Slowly, the guards retreated, leaving the room in silence. Lyra exhaled shakily, realizing just how dangerous their world had become. Not only did they face the Queen's schemes, but supernatural forces lingered in every shadow, waiting for a chance to strike. You're more powerful than I imagined, Lyra whispered. Kaelin looked down, a shadow of doubt crossing his pale face. Power is nothing if I cannot control it. And, if the Queen learns the truth... His voice trailed off. Lyra's hand covered his. Then, we will keep it from her. Together, we will protect it, no matter the cost. The days that followed were tense. Lyra settled into the palace routine, tending to Kaelin while remaining wary of the Queen's ever-watchful eyes. The new Queen's presence was like a storm cloud, her sharp gaze catching even the smallest movements. Every time Lyra approached Kaelin, she felt the weight of scrutiny pressing down on her. One afternoon, as Lyra fed Kaelin a small bowl of warm porridge, she noticed the Queen standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. I hear the boy's health is improving, she said smoothly. I hope it is thanks to my palace's care, not Outside influence. Lyra's eyes met the Queen's, steady and unflinching. Kaelin responds to me, because he trusts me. That is all. The Queen's lips curved in a thin, cold smile. Trust is fleeting. Power, however, is permanent. She turned and left without another word, but the chill she left behind lingered in the room. That night, Lyra stayed by Kaelin's side longer than usual. He was restless, tossing in his bed as shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. Finally, he whispered, "Lyra, the walls speak tonight. They are angry. They warn me. Something is coming." "What is coming?" Lyra asked softly, brushing a hand along his arm. He shook his head. "I don't know. But we must be ready. I trust only you to help me. Only you." The words pressed heavily on her heart. She had felt a bond growing between them, delicate yet unbreakable, but the weight of responsibility was immense. Protecting Kaelin meant risking everything: her position in the palace, her life, even her heart. Suddenly, the candlelight flickered violently. The shadows on the walls swirled, twisting into forms she could not recognize. A low whisper filled the room, soft and echoing, as if the stones themselves were speaking. Kaelin's eyes widened, and he reached for her hand, instinctively. "They are here," he said, his voice trembling. Before Lyra could respond, a cold wind swept through the chamber, snuffing out the candles. Darkness enveloped them. She felt Kaelin tense beside her, his small body shaking with fear and resolve. Then, in the quiet of the darkened room, Lyra heard a voice, not human, not fully audible, but unmistakable in its intent. The boy. The boy must choose. Lyra gripped Kaelin's hand tighter. "Choose what?" she whispered. He swallowed hard, eyes shining with determination. "To be strong, or to be taken." The words made her heart ache. The boy she had come to protect was standing on the edge of forces far beyond his years, far beyond her understanding. And yet, he faced it with courage that shone brighter than any candle. Hours passed in tense silence until the first light of dawn slipped through the curtains. The storm outside had calmed, but the echoes of the night remained. Kaelin sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the pendant she had seen before, now glowing faintly as if it remembered the shadows that had visited them. Lyra knew then that this was only the beginning. The palace, the queen, the old magic, all of it would test them. But as she looked at Kaelin, small yet unyielding, she realized that she could not turn away. She had been brought here not just to heal him, but to stand with him, against a world that sought to control him. And in that moment, a silent promise formed between them, unspoken but understood. They would face whatever came together, no matter the darkness, no matter the danger. Lyra kissed the top of his head gently, whispering, "We will not fail." Kaelin's lips curved in a small, brave smile. "Then let them come," he said, his voice steady now. "Let them try." The palace remained silent around them. Yet Lyra could feel it, a tension lingering in the stones, in the shadows, in the very air they breathed. Something was watching, waiting, patient and relentless. And soon, they would move. She looked at Kaelin and realized that the boy who ate only from her hands was more than an heir. He was the key to a kingdom's future, a child of magic and destiny, whose life and choices would ripple far beyond the walls of Velthar. And as the first light of morning touched the cold stone floors, Lyra knew with certainty. The coming days would be filled with danger, intrigue, and power beyond imagination. But one truth remained: the bond between healer and heir, fragile yet unbreakable, would be their shield against all the shadows. The morning sun fell weakly through the tall windows of Velthar's palace, casting long shadows across the stone floors. Lyra moved quietly through the halls, carrying a small basket of herbs and salves. She had grown accustomed to the cold, quiet rhythm of the palace. Yet each day brought new tension, new whispers that seemed to follow her like restless ghosts. Kalen was already awake, sitting by the window in his chamber, watching the courtyard below. His small hands traced the patterns of the shadows that shifted with the morning light. He did not speak at first. He only stared, thoughtful and silent. Lyra set the basket down and approached. "You've been watching the courtyard for a long time," she said softly. Kalen glanced at her, a faint smile on his pale lips. "The walls speak in the morning, too. They tell me who comes and who goes. They warn me of danger before it arrives." Lyra knelt beside him, brushing a hand over his arm. "Then we must listen carefully. Together. You are not alone in this. Kalen." He looked at her with eyes that were older than his years. "I know," he whispered. "That is why I trust you. Only you." The bond between them had grown stronger, undeniable and quiet, like a river flowing under ice. Yet, it was fragile. The Queen's presence loomed like a shadow over every moment, her eyes watching from the high windows, her smile always just a little too cold. Lyra could feel the tension building in the palace. Every glance, every movement, seemed calculated, waiting for the right moment to strike. Later that day, the Alpha King returned from his council. He was a tall man, with hair like midnight, and eyes that burned with both authority and a quiet weariness. The court hushed as he passed, his presence commanding every corner of the room. Lyra had seen him before, briefly, but now she noticed the subtle ways he observed her. A fleeting glance, a slight tilt of the head, as if measuring her in secret. Kalen stirred when the king entered the chamber, his small frame stiffening. Lyra moved closer to him instinctively, offering a quiet reassurance. "It's all right," she whispered. The king approached the boy, kneeling slightly to meet his gaze. "Kalen," he said in a low voice, "I hear you are recovering well. Your strength grows each day." Kalen looked at him, unflinching. "Because Lyra helps me." The king's eyes flicked to Lyra, a shadow of surprise passing over his stern features. He had expected the boy to speak only of the palace doctors, or perhaps even the queen. The honesty, simple yet brave, struck him. "Lyra," he said finally, his voice careful. Lyra bowed slightly. "I am only doing my duty, Your Majesty." The king studied her for a long moment, then nodded and rose. "Very well. Keep watching over him. The palace can be dangerous for a boy like Kalen." As he left, the air seemed heavier, charged with unspoken tension. Lyra glanced at Kalen, whose eyes lingered on the doorway long after the king had passed. Do you like him?" she asked softly. Kalen hesitated, then nodded. "I like him because he watches. He sees things I cannot say aloud. But he is not like me. He cannot understand everything." Lyra smiled faintly. "No one can understand everything, not even me. But I will try." The afternoon brought another challenge. The queen summoned Lyra to her private chamber, under the guise of discussing Kalen's care. The room was richly decorated, with tapestries of crimson and gold. But the warmth of the space was false, more a trap than comfort. "You are very close to the boy," the queen said smoothly, gesturing for Lyra to sit. "Do you know the dangers that follow him? Do you understand the responsibility you have taken upon yourself?" Lyra kept her posture straight, calm and measured. "I understand. My responsibility is to care for him, nothing more." The queen's eyes narrowed, sharp and calculating. "You are clever to say that, but cleverness is not always enough. The boy is not just a child. He carries power that could shift the balance of this kingdom. And you are part of that now." Lyra met her gaze steadily. I will not use him for my own gain. I will protect him, no matter the cost. The queen smiled again, cold and deliberate. We shall see. She turned and left, leaving Lyra with the sense of an invisible weight pressing down on her chest. The queen's ambition was palpable, and the danger it brought was closer than ever. When Lyra returned to Kaelin's chamber, she found him sitting quietly, with the silver pendant glowing faintly in his small hands. They are coming again, he whispered. Lyra knelt beside him, her voice soft but determined. Then we will be ready. We face them together, Kaelin. The shadows in the room shifted subtly, responding to the boy's presence. Lyra realized that his connection to the palace, to the magic within it, was deeper than she had imagined. The pendant pulsed faintly, almost as if it remembered every secret whispered in the palace over centuries. Night fell quickly, darker than usual, and a wind rose outside that rattled the windows and carried a faint, strange melody. Lyra stayed by Kaelin's side as he drifted into a restless sleep, murmuring soft words she could not understand. Suddenly, the door opened with a loud creak, and figures moved silently into the room. Lyra's heart raced, but she did not panic. She stood protectively in front of Kaelin, her hands ready, her mind sharp. It was the queen's emissaries, though their eyes were glazed and their movements stiff, as if controlled by some unseen force. Lyra felt the air grow heavy with tension, thick and almost alive. Kaelin stirred and whispered, "Do not fear. They cannot harm us if we stand together." Lyra's eyes widened. "Kaelin, you are commanding them?" "Thing." Lyra's, "Come in time. Come 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 in time." He nodded. "Only because they respond to the pendant. They are part of the old magic. They listen to me, but they are dangerous if I lose focus." Lyra took a deep breath, steadying herself. She realized the boy's power was not just in his words, but in the bond they shared. His trust in her gave him strength, and her courage bolstered him in return. Together, they were a force the queen could not easily manipulate. The emissaries hesitated, then slowly backed away, retreating into the shadows. The moment the door closed, Lyra felt a wave of relief wash over her. She knelt beside Kaelin, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You are remarkable," she whispered. "Braver than anyone I have ever known." He looked at her with solemn eyes. "I cannot do this alone. I need you, Lyra." Her heart tightened. "And you will not be alone, Kaelin. Not while I am here." The night passed quietly after that. But the tension in the palace did not fade. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper a warning. Lyra understood now that Kaelin's magic, his very existence, was tied to the kingdom's fate. Protecting him was no longer just an act of care, it was a responsibility that carried consequences far beyond her understanding. As dawn approached, Lyra looked at the boy asleep in his small bed, the silver pendant glowing faintly against his chest. She knew that the days ahead would test them both, against ambition, against power, and against forces that had waited for centuries to claim him. But she also knew this. The bond they shared, delicate and unbreakable, would be the shield against all the shadows. And no matter what came, she would not let him face it alone. And somewhere deep within the palace, in the cold stone walls and the twisting shadows, someone or something waited, waiting for the right moment to strike, waiting to see who would falter first. The boy, the healer, or the kingdom itself. Lyra pressed a hand gently against Kaelin's, whispering, "We are ready. Let them come." Kaelin smiled faintly in his sleep, the trust in his small heart stronger than any fear. But the palace, alive with secrets and ambition, knew that the real test had only just begun. The palace of Velthar was quieter than usual, yet the silence was heavy, full of anticipation. The storm had passed days before, But the tension it left in the air had not. Lyra moved through the halls with careful steps, aware that eyes were watching from hidden corners. The new queen's ambition had not waned. If anything, it had grown sharper, more dangerous. Kalen waited in his chamber, pale and restless. His small hands clenched the silver pendant, which pulsed faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. Lyra knelt beside him, her voice soft but steady. "Are you ready, Kalen?" He looked at her, determination shining through his fragile appearance. "I have no choice," he whispered. "But with you, I feel stronger." Lyra's heart tightened. She had come to care for him more than she had ever imagined, and the bond they shared had grown beyond simple trust. It was a connection built on respect, courage, and quiet understanding. She placed her hand over his. "Then we face this together. Whatever comes, we face it together." The first sign of danger arrived shortly after, as the queen's emissaries appeared in the chamber. Their eyes were blank, their movements stiff, as though they were no longer fully their own. Lyra rose to stand in front of Kalen, ready to protect him, but he lifted his small hand. "Stop," he said firmly. The air seemed to shiver with his voice. The emissaries froze, shadows bending slightly toward him, the magic in his words undeniable. Lyra watched, awed, as the boy she had protected for so long commanded forces far beyond his years. "They are under her control," Lyra said softly, "but they will not harm us while you are here." Kalen nodded. "I know, but we cannot wait. She will try again, stronger this time." As night fell, the tension in the palace thickened. Lyra prepared Kalen for what was coming, her hands gentle as she tended to him. The pendant around his neck glowed faintly, its silver light reflecting in his wide, determined eyes. Suddenly, the queen herself appeared at the chamber door, her presence sharp and commanding. "You will hand him over," she said smoothly, her voice calm, yet filled with hidden menace. "The boy's power belongs to the throne, to me." Lyra stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "Kalen is not yours to command. He chooses who he trusts, and he trusts me." The queen's lips curved in a thin, cold smile. "You are brave, healer, but bravery alone will not save you." She stepped closer, her presence heavy with authority and danger. "The boy will obey me, or you will both pay the cost." Kalen's small hands clenched the pendant, and the shadows in the room responded, stretching and bending toward him. Lyra's heart pounded, but she remained close, whispering encouragement. "Focus on your strength, Kalen. You are more than fear. You are more than power. You are in control." The queen's smile faltered slightly as she watched the boy's quiet courage. For the first time, Lyra noticed a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. The queen had underestimated the bond between healer and heir, a bond stronger than ambition, stronger than fear. Kalen took a deep breath, standing taller despite his small frame. "And she is not mine to fear." The pendant pulsed brighter, and the shadows around the emissaries and the queen recoiled. Lyra gasped softly, the magic within him, guided by trust and courage, was powerful enough to shift the balance in the room. The queen hesitated, realizing that her control over the palace, over the heir, was not absolute. In that moment, she understood that power could not be taken by force when it was earned through trust and loyalty. Lyra stepped closer to Kalen, holding his small hand. "You did it," she whispered. You stood up to her. Kalen's eyes met hers, a mixture of relief and awe shining in their depths. "We did it. Together." The queen, realizing her attempt had failed, withdrew gracefully, her cold smile returning but softer this time. "This is not over," she said, voice low and deliberate. "The palace will not forget this day." Then she left, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Lyra sank beside Kalen, relief washing over her. "You were incredible," she said, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "The strength you hold inside. It is more than anyone could imagine." Kaelin leaned against her, exhausted but proud. "I could not have done it without you," he whispered. "You made me believe in myself." The bond between them had transformed. No longer just healer and child, they were partners in facing the shadows. A team forged in trust and courage. Lyra realized that protecting him was no longer merely an act of duty. It was a choice, one she would make every day, no matter the danger. Days passed, and the palace slowly returned to its usual rhythm, though the tension lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. The Alpha King began to take notice of Lyra in a way he had not before. Her bravery, her calmness in the face of danger, and her unwavering care for Kaelin impressed him more than any battle or council meeting ever could. One evening, as Lyra tended to Kaelin by the window, the king entered quietly. "You have done well," he said, his voice low and measured. "Kaelin is stronger because of you, and I am grateful." Lyra looked up, startled by the rare praise from a man who rarely showed emotion. "Thank you, Your Majesty," she said softly. The king studied her for a moment, as if weighing words unspoken. Then he nodded, a hint of warmth touching his usually stern features. "The palace is safer with you here," he said finally. "But beware, not all threats are visible." Lyra nodded, understanding the warning. The queen's ambition had not vanished, and the palace still held secrets in every shadow. Yet for the first time, she felt a quiet confidence. They had faced the queen's challenge, and together, they had prevailed. That night, as Lyra and Kaelin sat together, the boy whispered, "Do you think the king understands now? Do you think he sees why I trust you?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I think he is beginning to see. But what matters most is that we know the truth, that our bond, our trust, is what keeps us strong." Kaelin nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Then we are ready," he said. "Ready for whatever comes next." The moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating the silver pendant that pulsed gently against Kaelin's chest. It was a symbol not only of his power, but of the courage and trust that bound them together. Lyra knew that their journey was far from over. Shadows and ambition would return, testing their strength and their bond. But they were ready. Together, they could face anything. In the quiet of the palace, Lyra pressed a gentle kiss to Kaelin's forehead. "Rest now," she whispered. "Tomorrow, we face the world together." As she watched him close his eyes, a calm resolve settled over her. The Alpha King's court, the palace, and the forces that moved within it could no longer manipulate him easily. Kaelin had grown not just in strength, but in courage, in wisdom, and in the knowledge that trust and love were more powerful than fear. Outside, the palace was silent, but the stones seemed to hum with a quiet approval, as if the walls themselves acknowledged the new order. The boy, who once would eat only from her hands, had become a symbol of hope, a spark of light in the shadowed halls of Velthar. And for Lyra, she understood that her own life had changed irrevocably. She had entered the palace to care for a boy, but she had found purpose, courage, and a bond stronger than any fear. In the days that followed, the Alpha King would continue to watch. Kaelin would grow stronger, and the Queen would remain a presence, ambitious, dangerous, but no longer able to dominate the boy she once sought to control. Lyra and Kaelin had claimed their strength together, a bond forged in trust and courage, ready to face the shadows of the world. And as the first light of dawn broke over Velthar, Lyra held Kaelin's hand and whispered softly, "No matter what comes, we face it together." Kaelin smiled. The weight of fear lifted from his small shoulders. "Together," he repeated. The palace, the shadows, and the magic within it would never forget that night. and neither would they.